Excellent. How important do you feel is for a graphic designer to have fine art skills?
I think it's really important for a graphic designer to have fine art skills, in that I think that just understanding art and its function, and I love art just in general because nothing you do with art is wrong. It's all a personal interpretation. It's what people like, and it's back to that subjectivity and that intangible quality of what drives the world. I mean, one month one form of design will be hot, and the next month it'll be another form of design. Somebody's always finding something different. David Carson came up with this idea of taking type and using that as design in a way that was far different than anybody else had ever done, and that became hot and became something that everybody enjoyed and were aspiring to do. And then that kind of took, it ran its course. Now he's still very good and does a lot of really unusual things, and stylistically he's got a tact and a knack for creating things that still to this day are very unusual and unique, and people love it. But that, after a while, there'll have to be something a little bit different. People always are, there's different tastes out there, and that's what how trends are created. Different tastes and people inventing and creating new things.
I don't think it's a necessity, but I think it's definitely an enhancement. The way that's relevant, I guess, is if someone who has fine art experience, probably just through exercise, has a better appreciation of composition and maybe color or texture, or some of the other things that are meant to tools of design that are intended to create an emotional effect, as opposed to but as a designer, I think you have more tools you have to kind of merge into a specific communication.
Personally, I feel it's important. I like to see students or anyone of my artists be able to draw to some extent, or illustrate. I think that there's a balance between fine art and design. That some really some great designs are coming out of some fine art stuff. I think it's really inspirational. As far as applying that, I really like a student or someone else that can draw, that can sketch, they can start with a pencil and then into something it's going to be electronic or something. So.
I mean, that comes back to the first question. I think, like, again, you got to be a fine artist first, and then you got to be a graphic designer. You need them for everything. You need them to do a logo. You need to illustrate a logo. You need it for everything. It's a different way. It's another. It's another fine art. Advertising to me is just another way of doing fine art. Because once you do it by hand, once you do it in the computer, it's still fine art. It's still art. It's still art you're creating to convey something, to show somebody, to make somebody understand something, to convey a message. So
I would say that they shouldn't confuse actual design concepts with fine art ability, because for example, some illustrators like Gary Baseman, his art, he is a fine artist, but it's not, it is refined, but maybe not to the point where a lot of people consider fine art. And so you have to master the concepts of design, but your execution doesn't always have to be perfect, and sometimes it's actually better if it's not perfect. Does that make sense?
I think I understood as far as Gary Baseman being more of an artist, yet his work sort of portrays itself also a lot as a design work. It kind of passes on to not just being like a painting on the wall, but also something that could be applied for design.
Yeah, and it's kind of like with color. You kind of have a good brochure, that it's going to be put somewhere if you don't know anything about color. You don't know anything about, complementary colors. So any of that kind of stuff, if you don't know about, what type were put together, or so, it always goes back to, to old school stuff. It always goes back to the principles, so.
I think for graphic designers, I think it's really important that they have design skills or fine art skills, excuse me, because in the field of graphic design and interactivity and multimedia, it always comes back down to getting your concept to somebody before you even go full speed and do it. You have to always be able to find a way visually, by hand and on paper, to explain that idea and that concept to somebody before you can even go out and attempt to start sitting down at the computer and selling somebody on the idea. So I think it's really important that somebody has fine art skills.
Personally, I think it's very important. And maybe I'm biased because that's the background that I came from, but from what I've found is you can teach anyone the skills to be a designer. They can learn the programs, they can learn the design rules, how to break the rules. But when you have a fine art background, it's a talent that you have. It's something that can't be taught. It's the way that you see the world, the way that you visualize things, the way you can conceptualize things in your head. And I've just found that a lot of the times it's what makes the difference between a good designer and a great designer.